Good evening, and thank you for viewing the November 6th meeting of the Arcata City Council. The City Council meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting with both in-person attendance and teleconference access via Zoom. Start with the land acknowledgement. The City of Arcata acknowledges that the lands we are located on are the unceded ancestral lands of the Wiyot tribe. The land that Arcata rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Gudini, meaning over in the woods or among the redwoods. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the lands and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The City of Arcata acknowledges the Wiyot community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement seeks to aid in dismantling the legacy narratives of settler colonialism. If you would like to, please join me for the flag salute. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Matthews,
Here.
Vice Mayor Stillman, Councilmember Schaefer,
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Here.
Councilmember White,
Here.
all present.
All right, we have a couple proclamations to read. The first proclamation is recognizing November 15th, 2024 as Zero Waste Day, and this proclamation will be read by Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Thank you. Whereas the City of Arcata does not have adequate manufacturing infrastructure to support recycling, and the majority of the materials recovered for recycling and composting must be transported long distances to re-enter a manufacturing process. And whereas the zero waste philosophy is comprehensive, first emphasizing upstream waste prevention strategies and including materials reuse, recycling-based manufacturing, recycling, composting, and food waste digestion. And whereas Zero Waste has been an integral part of the Arcata community since Zero Waste Humboldt wrote the Zero Waste Action Plan in 2017 for the city of Arcata. And whereas Zero Waste Humboldt reduced waste at this year's North Country Fair, Zero Waste Humboldt organized, coordinated, and with the help of many wonderful volunteers and local worm guy, collected compost. And whereas the City of Arcata joined Zero Waste Humboldt's refill, not landfill network in 2016 when they were awarded a water refill station by the nonprofit. An estimated 20,073 bottles have been filled this year to reduce single-use plastic bottles in our waste stream. And whereas Zero Waste Humboldt wants to continue to build on their refill, not landfill network from 2016 in hopes to award more water refill stations around Humboldt County in the next few years. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes November 15th, 2024 as Zero Waste Day and calls upon all Arcata residents to adopt or renew their commitment to choose to reuse. This can be done by reusing refillable cups, water bottles, food takeout containers, and shopping bags. The council commits to learning innovative waste prevention approaches and asks Arcatans to make a special effort to reduce waste and be mindful of purchases all year round. And today it will be accepted in person by Jose Posada Cabrera of Zero Waste Humboldt.
Go anywhere. Sorry. It's my first time.
Congratulations. And if you want to say something, you can, and you don't have to. It's up to you.
Where do I stand?
Oh, right at the right. Stand at the podium and there's a microphone right there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jose. I'm currently a student at Cal Poly Humboldt, seeking a business degree with a concentration in accounting. Currently working with Zero Waste through the school. It's been fun, and I've been learning a lot, and this definitely means a lot now. All right, thank you.
The next proclamation is in recognition of California Retired Teachers Week, November 3rd through 9th, 2024, and this proclamation will be read by Councilmember Schaefer.
All right, thank you. One of my favorite to read because I hope to be a retired teacher one day, and I come from a long line of retired teachers and school administrators. So, in recognition of California Retired Teachers Week, November 3rd through 9th, 2024, whereas the California Retired Teachers Association was formed by Laura E. Settle in 1929 at the start of the Great Depression with the goal of reviving the economic hardships suffered by retired teachers, and for 95 years, sorry. hold on, wrong word, and for relieving the economic hardships suffered by retired teachers, and for 95 years has been the leading advocate for providing teachers with sufficient retirement income. And whereas the California Retired Teachers Association also provides continuing support to active and future teachers, providing grants, scholarships, and donations totaling more than $750,000 a year. And whereas retiree spending from pensions generated $76.1 billion in economic benefits to California, and whereas the annual dollar value of 1,057,380 volunteer hours donated by retired teachers throughout the state has reached $40,825,449 during the most recent reporting period. And whereas last year our North Coast Division donated $15,100 in local grants and scholarships and $250 each to 3 of our local museums and the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and additionally volunteered their time in schools, museums, hospitals, the Little Red Schoolhouse, Food Bank, and other community organizations. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes November 3rd through 9th, 2024 as California Retired Teachers Week in Arcata, and encourages residents to honor all teachers and acknowledge the vital role that retired teachers fulfill in every community throughout California. Dated November 6th and signed by our Mayor Meredith Matthews, and we have Wendy Bronca here from the California Retired Teachers Association to accept.
I'm honored to accept this proclamation on behalf of the North Coast Division of the California Retired Teachers Association, and I just wanted to thank the Arcata City Council for recognizing all that the retired teachers offer to our community through their volunteerism and fundraising for all of those wonderful organizations that she mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our last proclamation tonight will be in recognition of Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, November 17th through 23rd, 2024. And this proclamation will be read by Councilmember White.
Thank you. Whereas the theme of National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week 2024 is being homeless is not a crime and housing is a human right. And whereas people from all walks of life, including individuals, families with children, employed, unemployed workers, elderly residents, veterans, disabled individuals, and youth are impacted by hunger and homelessness. And whereas the community recognizes that hunger and homelessness continues to be a serious problem for many individuals and families living in Arcata, and no one should have to worry about whether they will have food on their plate or a roof over their head. And whereas the California Center for Rural Policy reported in their Humboldt County Food Assessment that hunger is a daily experience and that more than 31% of adults experience food insecurity, while 37% of households with children experience food insecurity. Most live on fixed income or survive paycheck to paycheck. And whereas while homelessness creates barriers to accessing essential services such as affordable housing, healthcare, housing, childcare, and education, the cost of these necessities often contribute to hunger, food insecurity, and people experiencing homelessness on any given night. Whereas the aim of the National Coalition for Homelessness is to eradicate homelessness by solving the root causes of it, to educate the public about the many reasons people are hungry and homeless, including the shortage of affordable housing for low-income residents, and to encourage support for the organizations committed to sheltering, providing support services as well as meals, food supplies, clothing, and hygiene products to homeless and hungry. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the City Council of City of Arcata that the week of November 17th through the 23rd, 2024 is Homeless Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week and encourages all people in the community to work together to find meaningful solutions for those problems, dated November 6, 2024, and signed by our Mayor Meredith Matthews. And tonight it'll be accepted by Winchell Dillenbeck from AHA, Affordable Homeless Housing Alternatives Representative. Thank you.
Good evening. I love the new mic. I haven't been here since then. My name is Winchell Dillenbeck. I reside in McKinleyville, and I am an AHA representative. I am also a board member for Healthcare for All California and a member of CARA, the California Alliance for Retired Americans, all impacted, and many other groups. I want to thank the Arcata City Council for continuing its work here in Arcata and for helping create awareness. I think the proclamation just speaks for itself, so I'm not going to be long-winded. I guess why I'm involved is really because of my faith and my compassion for those who are suffering out there and what we can do for them. And I think that all of you are probably on that same page. With that said, there's been a lot of progress made on dealing with hunger and homelessness, but the issue of hunger and homelessness, I think this is the most challenging issue that we have in the community because they have a hard time representing themselves, unlike a lot of other issues where they can do it. So the issue of hunger and homelessness, it is challenging, and I know one of the things that you really struggle with is the resources. You know, I've seen the San Antonio model where they have everything under one house, and it's a great model, but it takes a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of organizations that are working on this. You know, unfortunately, due to their schedules, I do want to mention Arcata House Partnership. We did invite them to join us tonight, but they do a lot of work for the city of Arcata. And of course, AHA has been providing showers for several years now to the homeless, providing them with food and clothing and hygiene products and all of those things. And there are a lot of other people. I was at Eureka last night, and we'll be at the Board of Supervisors. And there are just so many good people that are working on this issue. So I would be failed to neglect to say that a lot of hard work is going on this issue, despite the challenges. So thank you for your efforts.
Okay, this will take us to council and staff reports. We'll start with staff updates.
Thank you, Mayor Matthews. I'd like to give you an introduction to our new equity manager. We have Mo Harper Desir, and Mo's here with us tonight. Mo will be working in 3 primary capacities as an equity manager. One of those will be to support the goals of Equity Arcata, make Arcata a more welcoming place, in particular for the BIPOC community. She will also be working on looking at the city and how the city can do better to work on diversity, equity, inclusion, and how can we incorporate better practices into what the city is doing. And then lastly, really, it's a 2-year funded position, and our hope is that this can be an ongoing permanent position with the city. And so securing funding, seeking community partnerships, and really the Equity Arcata piece is really going to be an outward looking piece that she's working closely both with the city and with the Cal Poly Humboldt Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and our partners there. So we're really excited to have her on board. Mo has a background in arts and education in arts management, social justice and leadership, and then she has a consulting business where she's worked on a wide variety of projects. And we'll have Mo come back a little bit more. This is her second week, and then give us an update on what's happening with Equity Arcata and what her focus is as we have a little more time. But Mo, if you wanted to, you're welcome to say a few words.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Thanks for the introduction. I think through this position, we'll be able to see how some intention and a heavy focus on DEI can really start to transform our community. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
And I'll just say, Mo really has some great ideas, and each time we've sat down and been able to meet so far, I'm like, oh, did you write that down? Did you write that down? She's had so many good ideas, and a lot of them are going to be, just really fun, and I think ways that enrich the city as a place to be, and the city of Arcata as a great place to work. So we're really pleased that you're here, Mo. Welcome. Just a couple items to report. I had a lot of fun. I wanted to get a sense of what it's like to set up the plaza and do the closures, and so I volunteered to help the chamber set up the traffic control, and it was great to see everybody out on Halloween. And I won't say more than that, but it was a good opportunity to kind of see what our user groups have to do to set up the plaza and do the traffic control. I also did a transit ride-along with Colin Fisk and Kelsey of the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities, and Cindy Wilcox, a resident who lives down near 11th Street in Arcata that regularly rides transit. And really the focus of that meeting was to think about and look at some of the challenges that are posed to the public by riding transit and some of the things that could be improved. And on the bus ride, we were able to talk about a whole host of projects that they're interested in, including improving bike and pedestrian infrastructure and really trying to make the city a better place for non-motorized transportation. I also participated with our community development director, David Loya, in a meeting with our consultant that's working on the standard of coverage with the Arcata Fire Department. And we had that's a project that's being undertaken in conjunction with Cal Poly Humboldt, the city, and also the fire district. And so that project is moving along, and we'll be receiving a draft report soon that will be available for public review. So I was glad to be able to be in on that meeting and see what the progress is on that report. That's all I have.
Thank you so much for that update. I really appreciated that. All right, let's do some council reports. Councilmember White, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. Welcome, Mo. Super excited about the possibilities of collaborating with you. Already had the opportunity to collaborate with Mo out in Valley West, North Arcata. And so, yeah, thank you for coming out there. And also just thank you to Merritt on our weekly walks out in North Arcata. Just boots on the ground, talking to residents, talking to the businesses, the unhoused community, everyone. Let's see, what's going on? Oh, I know. Has anybody felt those little shakers that we've had this last week or so? Just kind of a reminder that we all need to be disaster prepared. And to that end, just would like to invite everyone, all are welcome, on November 23rd out at 4700 Valley East. We will be having a disaster preparedness block party. So we will have all kinds of tablers out there. We'll be giving away free raffles for supplies. We'll have Lori Dangler, our resident expert and professor emeritus at Cal Poly Humboldt on earthquakes. She will be our guest speaker. What else? We will also have Arcata Fire District out there, the Tsunami Working Group, Tri-County Independent Living, and a whole bunch of others. It's all free, so come on out. We'll have Arcata CERT will probably be out there, as well as some of the other CERT teams. And we have a special musical guest called the Loud Neighbors Brass Band. Did I say that right? And as well as several food trucks. So yeah, it's all free. Come on out, get yourself educated, and find out what's going on out there. And I think that's all I have. We did something really cool. We opened up, a disaster preparedness resilient hub out in Valley West, North Arcata. And we did a ribbon cutting. I think we had like maybe 70, 80 people come out there. We had food, we had fun. We did a participatory budget final voting process out there that was allocated through the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And it was wonderful. And also during non-disaster times. When we're not doing training and other things, it will operate as a family resource center. In particular, we have a lot of Latinx families out there. There's great need. Often, the folks out there fall between the cracks, so we're just going to fill in that gap. But again, all are welcome. Come check us out. Thanks.
Okay. Well, this evening, I'm your representative on the Humboldt Transit Authority, and so I just wanted to give an update about some of the things that have been going on. So the theme now is Ride Humboldt, and you'll see that on the buses. And so the full wraps that have been on those buses for some time, as the contracts end, they'll be replaced with Ride Humboldt on the sides, and so you'll be able to have better visibility out of the windows. HCA has a full complement of drivers currently, and HCA offers service to Ukiah once a day, and they're looking to provide it twice a day if they can get the state funding. HCA coordinates with Mendocino Transit, which takes passengers to Santa Rosa. From there, Amtrak bus connects with them, and Amtrak now makes several stops. They used to be direct. You got on it, you never got off until you got over to over to Oakland area. But that's not how they do it anymore. So they are stopping along the way, so you can actually get off in different Bay Area towns. And they're in the process of putting together North State Express. And this is a proposal for intercity bus service consisting of 16 counties within our northern region. And it's connecting Highway 101 and 299. And at the October meeting, Greg Platt, the executive director, was given the green light to proceed with the development of this needed service. So that means that you'll eventually be able to take the bus from Reading, and you'll be able to change buses or whatever you need to do in Weaverville, and you'll be able to come all the way over Willow Creek, and you'll get to Arcata, and then you'll be able to go south. So it's trying to connect everyone together so you can actually have better transit, and it won't be all by car. So that's a big effort, and he's been working for some time with other counties that happen to have that transportation system interest that we have. Currently, HCA does not offer charter service because it's a federal law that prohibits it. So if somebody in this region wants to have a bus going to some party or an event, and it's they have to put out an RFP for it. It could be that someone answers that RFP in Colorado, and they get the contract, and then they drive from Colorado here to provide that service. So the only way to change something for rural communities like ours is to figure out how to change federal legislation. So I don't know if that's ever a possibility, but it would be something that'd be helpful, and also it would be a way for the local rural transportation systems throughout the United States to capture some funding, which would help their bottom line. The most recent grant for hydro buses has allowed for upgrades to the bus shelters, which may include ARP and the real-time passenger signs, and also funding was included to support reducing headways of the bus every 30 minutes to every 15 minutes, which is something that people have asked for a long time. They want to have shorter times. The first hydrogen bus will be delivered in January. This is a prototype bus that was engineered and built for HTA with the potential of a 400-mile range. And so it'll be a sort of a beginning, because other transit agencies will benefit from the process of what we've been doing, is coming up with this project. It's supposed to be delivered the first part of January. And then it'll be tested, and after it proves that it works really well and there aren't any problems, there'll be more ordered and delivered. Meanwhile, HCA staff goes back and they've checked on the beginning of it being built, and they're going back to inspect it during different times. So the Earth Center plans, which has been a long time project, were submitted to the City of Eureka's Design Review Committee. The ground floor will handle the transit center, and there will be additional office space, and we're hoping that HCOG will take one of the offices because they're so involved in transportation with HTA. And then there'll be 3 floors of income qualified housing that'll be managed by Danco, and Danco will be building this project. HCA's also received funding for a simulator to train drivers, and another one to train mechanics in maintenance and repairs. Now, we're no longer in the gas age. We're moving into electric buses and hydrogen buses, so they all require a different kind of skill level. So we'll be able to have that available also for the high schools and the colleges for people to come in and be able to use the simulator. You know, it sort of reminds me of the simulator we have up at the Cal Poly Library right now, where you can actually fly and you can take your basic training in it. So HCA has received, been in the discussion of having F Street stops. This is something I've been wanting to do. So on F Street, we have right out here, we have our bus stop right by City Hall. And when they come through and they have to go down to the transit center and then they have to make that loop, they stop and make that loop and come up, they lose time and it affects their headways. And they're trying to figure out how to be faster between Eureka and McKinleyville, because a lot of people want to cut down on that time so they can get there quicker. So one of the thoughts is eventually that we could have F Street where we have the right now we have the bus stop. That would be the one going north, and we would have put another one that would be on the other side by the F Street parking lot near the fire department for going south. And I think that will make a big difference on headways. So coming up soon is the 50-year anniversary. It's hard to believe it's 50 years for HTA, and it will be on July 14th and 15th to celebrate all the accomplishments. And the final thing I want to mention is the City of Arcata needs to send a letter of intent to HTA asking them to accept our fleet, which includes insurance. And HTA staff needs to have time to evaluate this request and have a recommendation for the HTA's December board meeting. So we need to move forward on that, and it's really important that we do that, because if we don't make the January 1st, 2025 deadline on having this happen, we'll be spending another year providing insurance for our bus fleet. So that's my report.
Can I ask you just a quick question? Do you know when the service connecting 101 and 299 might begin?
It's the future. They're working on it. And so they were finally given the green light they've just been talking about it, and now there's some problems. You have to work on the timing. So if you're coming Reading to Weaverville, and Weaverville's coming, they have a bus coming in and it doesn't come in for 20 minutes and you're there for 20 minutes, either you miss your connection. So it's a whole thing about trying to figure out how you're going to get all the connections to work. So that means people are going to have to redo their schedule.
Keep us posted.
Yes.
All right, Stacy?
Thank you. I was absent from our last meeting because I was actually out of town at a conference. It was the Cal Cities annual conference, and I was installed as the vice president of our Redwood region. So I get to represent the whole county in that region. And I also, the HCOG meeting was the day after our council meeting, so I also missed that. But we are looking for a new executive director. I think that was the big news, and she's partially to blame, so she can talk about that when it gets but we had an amazing executive director, and Sarah can tell you where she's headed to. But we are looking for a new one, and it is a really small and wonderful organization with a great compensation package. So hopefully we get another dynamic person to take over for us. I did go on a ride-along a few weeks ago. I don't think I reported on that, but I went, Colin Fisk, we went together and we met a gentleman who lives in Eureka. And I think, I don't know if I spent $2 or $4, but I left from our transit center here. Colin and I traveled from here. We got off in Eureka, walked over, met the gentleman in Eureka, went to Valley West, dropped him off at his appointment out there, and then we rode the bus back to the transit center here. So we were on a couple different journeys, and it was either $2 or $4. It was a great price, and it was easier than I expected, but obviously we still, being rural, have lots of areas to improve that. So it was good for me to get that perspective. I learned a lot on that. And I did get to go to the Kuna event. It was wonderful. It's a great addition to Valley West, so I'm excited about that. And then there will be a chamber mixer at the Hatchet House this Thursday from 5:30 to 7.
May I just say one thing? You can actually take the bus from Eureka to Ukiah for $2, and then $2 coming back.
Sarah?
All right. yeah, all my updates have been either teased at or taken already, and they have to do with hiring. So again, really happy to welcome Mo to the Equity Arcata team, and I know the Equity Arcata board is looking forward to working with you and those university partnerships and everything. So that was my one update, and then the other one also, yes, our CEA, the Redwood Coast Energy Authority, hired a wonderful executive director. It is Beth Burks from HCOG, as you might know. And so we are really excited to get her hitting the ground running in the new year. It's been a while that we've been looking and kind of in flux. So our whole organization over there, our CEA, is really excited to get her going. And those were just the only updates that I had.
All right. How's everybody doing? Tough night last night, huh? Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I know there's a lot of division in our country right now. We don't have to be divisive here. We all can hold compassion for one another, and there are a lot of different people in Arcata, and that's what makes us a wonderful town. So please, I know that everybody's kind of processing some trauma right now. I don't know, maybe you're not. But if you are, process respectfully and peacefully. And please don't vandalize things anymore. Done with the vandalism. All right, so the City Council values your comments. The public comment period allows people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. This early section of public comment is limited to 15 minutes, and speakers are limited to 2 minutes each. If you prefer to have a full 3 minutes of time for your public comments, this item is continued at the end of the meeting under item 13, where speakers are granted 3 minutes. Please know that pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the agenda. The council may respond to statements. There will also be a time to provide public comments specific to each item when the item is being reviewed by the council. So I know there are a lot of people wanting to speak tonight. We're only going to be able to take about 4 of you in person here. If you have cards that are numbered 1 through 4, please go ahead and line up. I will be taking the first 4 speakers here and then going to Zoom, and if there's any time left over, we can come back. Also, please realize that the agenda tonight is very, very short, so you will not really have to wait very long if you want to make public comment at the end. So can the person that has card number 1 please approach the dais for your 2 minutes? All right. First 4 people with numbers 1 through 4. All right.
Thank you. Now is the time of the furnaces, and only the light should be seen. These are the words of Jose Marti, philosopher and poet. Israel is committing a genocide which anyone with eyes can see. This week, Israel announced that it is kicking out the United Nations Relief Agency, providing relief to refugees in Gaza. This is yet another provocative escalation of the genocidal acts that Israel has been committing this last year. We have proposed that the City of Arcata form a sister city in Gaza. We've actually got an outpouring of support in the last few weeks, and we're very grateful for that. And even Sarah Schaefer and Kimberly White have come out saying that they already support it. We look forward in the next few months ahead to get more support from you guys, hopefully sooner than later. And certainly, as a city, we can follow through with our actions on our commitment declared when this council passed a ceasefire resolution. We can create cultural links and provide medical and humanitarian aid to Palestine. There will be many people who speak against this, Zionists who have deaf ears to the genocide that's being committed in their name. They will say any humanitarian aid to starving and injured refugees in Gaza is a support of terrorism. They fail to see the humanity of the Palestinians. They fail to understand that the idea of sister cities is to create human-to-human links, despite whatever differences our governments might have.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sylviane Levy-Boyd, and I'm a resident of Arcata. And I would like to express my feeling towards the possibility of adopting the city of Gaza from this area. And I would like to ask this city council to refrain itself from adopting such a position. There is such a controversy in politics going on in the Middle East, and I don't see any reason why here in Arcata we will bring more hate, violence, and disdain towards one another, because there is such a problem with the people here that have interest in both the Palestinian and the Israeli, but have expressed so much violence that we don't need to put oil on the fire. I don't think it's a responsibility for the city of Arcata to start getting into politics that are so complicated, and is not going to help anybody on any side. We put everybody in the same bag, and we use the typical scapegoat of the Jew being so bad, but it's not working, and it's hurting us, and it's hurting me in this county, where I don't feel safe with all the demonstration or the vandalism that's happening at the campus or anything like that. And I would really appreciate if the city council was considered not to get involved in such an endeavor. I will suggest that maybe becoming or adopting the city of in Ukraine will be a good thing to do, and will not put this community with an opposition so strongly already being expressed. It's nice to have a diversity, but it's not nice to have hate. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the numbering system. Would I be allowed? Yeah? Thank you.
Just a reminder, it's numbers 1 through 4. So this gentleman had number 2. So. Oh my goodness. All right.
Grade numbers are the first 4, and then the other ones are for if there aren't.
All right. Well, let's just let's keep going.
I have a green number, but you can go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Leonard Perry. I'm grateful to be here, be able to speak. I am actually here to speak about my good friend, my brother Mike. He was arrested on the plaza after barbecuing, and I would like to just bring up maybe a perhaps controversial topic, what has maybe become a buzzword in the last few hundred years, the concept of liberty, which I believe, any government representative, any police officer is going to speak an oath that they will defend the Constitution of these United States. And that Constitution speaks in favor of this concept called liberty. And liberty, as I understand it, expresses that we have the right to do as we will, the right to do what we want with our own bodies, as long as we are not hurting or infringing on anybody else's rights. I believe my brother Mike had his liberty infringed upon when the police arrested him violently for barbecuing, for cooking food for people. I don't know how I can speak against a system that uses violence so frequently, where violence is the answer to any kind of questioning of their power. But I just hope that y'all, as our representatives here in the city, doing what you can, will remember that liberty has a place here, and that Mike's liberty was infringed upon, that the oath to protect and defend the Constitution was broken and is broken every time violence is used against anybody who is not doing anything to anybody else, especially when somebody is simply cooking food for the community. And I don't know where to go from here, but I appreciate y'all for hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you. The last 2 people that stood up, we're not going to get to you. So you can sit down and make your public comment at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to hear all of us. And I fell in love with Arcata my first time in this region. And it was the community force that drew me here. I used to come, that metal slide, I used to slide down the slide and just become a kid again. And, but it wasn't until I moved to this region did I realize that we were very far away from the goals that we all should have of loving and respecting one another. And so today I speak as a person, knowing the gentleman Mike that was brutalized, and is just the other day I held him in my arms as he quivered. And he does not want anyone to tell his story or to be the center of any political movement, but I need to share that he's a loving, beautiful Black man. He's 6'5", so some might find that intimidating. He's a beautiful dark chocolate, well, mocha chocolate, kind of light chocolate, but for here, he's dark chocolate. And he was brutally beaten, and watching the video on October 8th has stuck with me, emphasized by so much that is going on throughout our nation. And we just need to act. So I am asking that all charges are dropped for this young man, and that we look into that. I know we said we would, and I'm hoping that we hear something back soon. This is a beautiful community, and it will be, I think, part of the assignment that Mo will have is going to carry on the beauty that we all deserve.
Thank you.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Eamon Armstrong. I've been a resident of Humboldt County and Arcata for 18 years. I'm here to address the request for making Gaza City a sister city. I urge you not to yield to the pressure from the loud and increasingly vocal group advocating for a sister city relationship with Gaza City. This request is not about creating peace or international goodwill. It is a political tool being used by a small but vocal faction to gain power and electoral advantage. In fact, they have been using you, the City Council, by promoting particular council members that represent their views. While it's necessary for people to express their views in a democratic society, we must be cautious when these views are driven by a group that seeks to exploit divisive issues for political gain. They call for a sister city relationship with Gaza City, but it is not about building bridges or promoting mutual understanding. It's an attempt to use the Arcata civic resources as leverage to advance a specific political agenda, one that disregards the moral and legal implications of such an association. We must recognize that Gaza is governed by Hamas, considered a terrorist organization by the US and many other countries, whose founding ideology openly calls for the genocide of Jews and whose actions have led to unspeakable violence. Any partnership with Gaza would be an endorsement of Hamas's goals and actions, which stand in stark contrast to the value of peace and unity here in Arcata. I believe that the City Council's responsibility is to make decisions that serve the best interest of all residents here, not halfway across the world. I urge you to reject this request. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take two more in person, and then I'm going to Zoom.
I am Lahava Devon, resident of Humboldt County for 5 decades, whose ancestors were and relatives are indigenous to Israel. I don't like the war in Gaza. I desperately want it to end with the hostages returned. I cringe at the killing of innocent children, and I want to see Gaza rebuilt into something beautiful. However, I don't think Arcata should make Gaza its sister city at this time, and here is why. First, there are legal prohibitions doing business with Hamas, a terrorist group who rules Gaza and whose openly stated ambition is to kill and oust every Jew in Israel. Second, the idea is unethical because there are both Jewish and Palestinian connected residents in Arcata, and endorsing one side inflames tensions, negates diversity, and gives Arcata a reputation of abetting violence and not peace. Third, I think the idea is impractical because Hamas intercepts and steals for itself the aid for civilians that gets into Gaza. And fourth, making Gaza its sister city is rewarding a local group that shouts down its opposition, extensively vandalizes, and operates outside the bounds of legality and civility. I conclude with this quip I heard. From the quad to the plaza, send them all to Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more. Good evening. I'm Bob Rottenberg, Arcata resident. Congratulations to the three of you on being reelected. I had originally intended to speak this evening about the idea of a sister city arrangement between Arcata and Gaza City. But given the results of last night's national election, I want to focus my time on something of immediate and local importance. I'm greatly concerned and fearful about the fate and safety of our immigrant population here in Arcata. I'm greatly concerned and fearful about the fate and safety of our neighbors who are sometimes regarded as non-conforming. I'm greatly concerned and fearful about the fate and safety of our neighbors who find themselves without homes to live in, especially with winter at our doorsteps. My faith tradition teaches me that we as a community are judged not by how much money we have or how successful our businesses may be. No. We are judged by how we take care of those who cannot easily take care of themselves. Those who find themselves on the outskirts of society and who, as a result, easily become the target of anger, frustration, and resentment. In the light of last night's election, these are the people we must work to protect so that we can continue being a community that demonstrates by our actions that we are a caring and welcoming city. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anybody on Zoom?
Yes, we have several speakers wishing to speak.
All right, I am going to take 3 of them because we're already over time.
Okay, so.
And knowing that the agenda is very, very short tonight, we've got 2 quick things to get through, so everybody is going to have a chance to speak. If you don't get to speak, if you're not one of the 3 people to speak now, you will have 3 minutes after our agenda.
So first we have Jean. Jean, go ahead, but you're muted.
Thank you. I came here to speak about the violence that I witnessed on the plaza. But as the mother of Palestinian children, with Palestinians being burned alive by people who are not peaceful and raped, gang raped with electrified rods that are broadcast to the public, one wonders why the people who are talking about shouting Free Palestine would ever come to such a well of emotion, as though they themselves do not have a history of Holocaust from which they would ask everyone in the world would say, never again. I want to repeat, there is a Palestinian man who was broadcast, it was recorded and released, and you can find it online, that was gang raped by occupation forces, 9 of them to be exact. They shoved fire extinguishers up his rectum. He died from being raped to death. Then a mob of Israelis, presumably Western colonialist Israelis, which is what was deemed as Zionists, the way we refer to segregationists of the past and now, came and rioted and beat the police who arrested him, who arrested the rapists. They did not allow it, and instead, Israeli government openly discussed the rape to death and said, it is good because Palestinians are not human. So, in this genocide that the World Court has ruled is plausible genocide, as they very slowly make their way to a conclusion before anyone acts to stop another one, they have concluded on occupation. Israeli occupation is a crime. 700,000 settlers are illegal, and they are burning Palestinians alive, burying Palestinians alive, beating them to death, sniper shooting them. You can see doctors' testimonies. By the way, B'Tselem
Thank you for your comment. Thank
has a
you.
So next we have GGH.
Hi, I am so disturbed by those who have gone ahead and spoken already. I came as well to speak about the police brutality on the plaza, and I would like to tie that to the violent and aggressive Zionists who are there in the room with you guys right now. A group of us who had an ofrenda set up at the Day of the Dead celebration in Eureka were stalked by the child of one of the Zionists. Our children were stalked, were aggressed, were flipped off, were harassed by this child. And then the parents came, and the parents harassed us while we attempted to simply honor those who have been genocided in Palestine. And I think it is remarkable to hear white people talking about their perceived unsafety, their lack of safety because of vandalism, when we have family who are being slaughtered. We have loved ones who are being killed every day, who are starving to death. And we have people who are being brutalized in Arcata on the plaza by police. It's all tied together. It's all settler colonialism, and Arcata and your city council are performative and disgusting. Your land acknowledgements are a lie. The fact that you sympathize with whites who have a perceived lack of safety because of vandalism, while people are literally being harassed and stalked every day by these Zionists in this community, rabid racists who wish death actively
Thank you for
upon
your
us. They
comment. That
say
was
it
your
from
2 minutes.
their
Thank you
mouth.
so much for your comments.
Next we have Sarai.
Yeah. Yeah. In general, the feeling that a lot of folks woke up with after the election of the president is something that like folks are walking around this community with like on the daily. Like the work we do, the hope we have, the efforts we put, all in order to just be let down again and again after we've supported again and again. To have people talk about not wanting a sister city. I'm all for a sister city, bud, but we can't even keep our community members safe from police, from stalkers, from performative emotions. Every day, all the time, the things that people are talking about, the things that we wish that Arcata was, it could be that. It would be that. And the fact that we have to come and we have to gather ourselves and we have to, like, for you guys to mute us at the end of 2 minutes, like, the looks on y'all's faces, it's disgusting. And it's hard for us to sit and watch this go over your faces and go over your experiences and go over your just ability to understand and empathize and comprehend what is going on right in front of you. It's exhausting. It's heartbreaking. And yet we will be continuing. And that is something that I really, really, really want to be heard loud and clear, is that the continuation.
Thank you for your comments. I'm sorry, that was your 2
The
minutes. Thank you.
continuation will mean that
All right.
it will mean that you will not be in office.
All right, we're going to move on to the consent calendar.
You won't have a job.
All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of October 16th, 2024. B, biweekly report on disbursement. Adopt ordinance number 1572, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending Article 1 in Chapter 2.
We really wish that you would listen. If you can continue to try to mute me, you can. But I just
It's
over
not
and over
removing.
again that we would like to have will in fact be ours.
Want to get Juan for me?
You will eventually listen.
You will listen.
When we're all suffering, when we're all hurting, when you finally feel it, then you'll come to us, and we've been yelling.
So why don't we remove them? What did remove? Is that the right one? There's 2 of them. They both were unmuting somehow themselves, so these are remove.
All right. Item C, adopt ordinance number 1572, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending Article 1 in Chapter 2, Title 2 of the Arcata Municipal Code to include the city manager's authority to sign documents, waive reading of text, and consent to read by title only. Adopt ordinance number 1573, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending Arcata Municipal Code regulations regarding boards, commissions, committees, and task forces, waive reading of text, consent to read by title only. E, approve the appointment of new senior project manager Laura Kadlick at salary range M185, step 5. F, approve the purchase of 3 2025 hybrid Ford Escapes and award contract to Harper Motors in the amount of $108,913.86, including tax, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. G, receive the city treasurer's cash and investment report for the quarter ending on September 30th, 2024. H, adopt resolution number 245-14, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata revising the effective date of decreases to certain fees and certain charges associated with commercial cannabis activity permits from January 1st, 2025 to October 25th, 2024. And I, approve the amended memorandum of understanding between the City of Arcata and the Arcata Police Association for July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2027, and authorize the mayor to execute. Would any council member or staff like to remove an item from the consent calendar?
I'm sorry, I just noticed with item H, can we remove that just to amend the date?
Yes, so we'll remove item H to amend the date. Any other council member would like to? Okay, does anybody have any public comment on the consent calendar?
Hello, my name is Joanne Gary, and I just want
acknowledge that you're moving in the right direction climate-wise in terms of purchasing electric hybrid vehicles and all, and I hope the same goes for your landscape tools. I continue to be dismayed by the gas lawnmowers mowing small patches of grass around the community center. We can stop that right now and, do a manual mower on those little places. It's not too much to ask, and we don't need to have noisy, polluting gas mowers anymore mowing the lawns, especially small patches of lawn. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so does anybody want to make a motion regarding?
Yep.
Is there anybody online? I'm sorry, wanting to make comment?
We have somebody have their hand raised, so I can unmute them. I don't know if they wanted to make public comment.
This is for public comment on the consent calendar.
Okay, Ellen, did you want to comment on the consent calendar, or did you have public comment for the open public comment session at the end of the meeting?
I have comment on this item. Climate change is also connected to
There we are.
everything going
Ellen,
on
excuse
in
me.
Gaza and related to our elections that you all are so
Sorry,
concerned
we're
about.
accepting comment on our consent calendar.
I'm co-signing everything that Jean, Gigi, Sarai,
So we might have to take a break.
and Rabbi Bob said
Okay,
earlier.
I'm going to take a
I'm
5-minute recess and we'll come back. Thank you. So I can entertain a motion.
I would move for the approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Stillman and a second by Councilmember Atkins Salazar. All in favor? Schaefer, sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The consent calendar passes. All right, that brings us to new business. So we've got to receive an update on the City of Arcata's pension funding and outstanding unfunded accrued liability. We have a staff report from Finance Director Miller.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and the members of the public. So just real quickly, I wanted to summarize some of the more important financial information that we're going to talk about tonight so that we can highlight a few things. First of all, I wanted to point out that based on the most current valuation from CalPERS, which is dated 6/30/2023, and again, I realize that's more than a year ago. It's the most recent actuarials they have. You're also going to notice on this first sheet, if you take a look at it, I have highlighted or I've bolded and underlined a number of dates. Part of the reason for that is that the dates get a little bit confusing tonight, and I am going to bounce back and forth between fiscal year 22-23, 23-24, 24-25, and even into 25-26, and that has a lot to do with the timing and the fact that we're always sort of working backwards and forwards with CalPERS. So I apologize. I'll try to distinguish that, but if you have any questions as we go, please feel free to interrupt me and get started. Again, we get these reports annually, and they're updates to what we would consider our unfunded accrued liability. The current number is $32.8 million, and just to put this in perspective, this is about 10 times all of our other debt put together. So it is certainly the city's largest source of liability and debt owed to outside agencies. It is an increase of $2 million from the prior year, the valuation date of 6/30/2022. One of the other things that we'll talk about a little bit is the impact of the additional just under $170,000 that will increase your UAL or unfunded accrued liability amount is delayed. Even though it's dated 2023, it won't actually go into effect until 2 years later in fiscal year 25-26. And again, this is sort of those crazy date issues. It also has some interest impacts that I'll explain in a little bit more detail. Unfortunately, one of the challenges with our unfunded liability is that it is not stable. It isn't like a 30-year mortgage where you borrow X amount of dollars and you pay it over time. Unfortunately, it has a tendency to grow, and we've seen quite a bit of growth over the last few years in just the principal amounts that we owe based on interest and additional factors that come into play. And that $2 million increase in unfunded liability is actually essentially the result of the investment return in the prior year of 6.1%. That sounds great, but unfortunately it was under the target rate of 6.8%, and that's one of the challenges we're facing with CalPERS, both in recent history and potentially going forward, and we'll talk about that. The good news is that in the current year, CalPERS just announced a preliminary investment return of 9.3%, so we are looking actually forward to a decrease next year on our UAL. And then the other two things that we'll talk in more detail about is the actions that the council took this past year to reduce those liabilities. You made a $5 million additional discretionary payment. It'll be referred to as an ADP through the presentation, and that actually will decrease your annual payments by an average of just around $375,000 for the next 20 years. So it has a big impact and will save you $2.2 million in interest. So it was a positive. In addition to that, because of the total $7.5 million you invested last year, including the $2.5 million in the Section 115 trust, we're looking at increasing our funding level from 69% to 76%, which is also a pretty significant move forward in stabilizing your unfunded liability debt. Real quickly, we'll talk about the basics. We'll talk about the UAL as of 6/30/2023. We'll talk about changes. Again, we'll talk about the impact of that $7.5 million investment in CalPERS that you made. And then the big question really tonight will be for you is going to be whether or not you want to do a fresh start re-amortizing the outstanding liabilities from 10 years or 15 years. We'll talk about the difference. And then if there's any other additional next steps. So this graphic provides a really straightforward showing of the three areas that the funding comes from for CalPERS on an annual basis, and it's a breakdown of the dollar. As you can see, 55% or 55 cents of every dollar comes from investment earnings, which is why that investment rate is so important, and it has such an impact when we don't make that 6.8% discount rate or investment projection. 34% comes from employers, that is the city, and then 11% comes from employees or the members. This is as of June 30th of 2024. Just to let you know, this dollar changes every year, and unfortunately it doesn't change in favor of the city. In last year, it was 56 cents came from investment earnings and 33% came from employers. You go back a few more years to 2018, it was 59 cents came from investment earnings and employers only contributed 28 cents. And if you go back, about 15 years or more, there was a time when 65 to 70 cents per dollar came from investment earnings. So you can see how that shift in liability has moved to employers and is, again, part of the reason that we're where we are today with the outstanding debt. So CalPERS contributions, just a little bit of a history here, and I'll be really quick through this. Back in the 90s, things were really good, and investment returns averaged over 10%. Things were super funded. There was a point where they were funded at 120%, so they were above the amounts owed. And what ended up leading to sort of the demise is a couple things. One, of course, investment earnings went down, but we took advantage of that overfunding and they reduced contributions, they gave better benefits, and sort of expanded the liability. Come to today, and our investment returns clearly are not meeting the assumptions, and the discount rate, which is also your investment rate target, has dropped from 8.25% to 6.8%. And if you look in the little square at the top, you can see the 10-year history is below that at 6.7%, and the 20-year history is below that at 6.2%. And that really explains a lot as to why our UAL has increased so much over the last 10 years. I will also tell you that there is talk about reducing it at CalPERS this next year to 6.5 or 6.25, which would probably be more realistic, but that would also increase our UAL. So it's more realistic, but it also will hurt us in the end. In addition to that, there's also other factors that impact this growing debt. One is inflation, which impacts all of us. Mortality rates. People are currently living longer than they were originally expected to based on actuarial tables. Payroll has grown more than what was built into the assumptions. And then valuations for more conservative amortizations have reduced that amount. All of these things, again, are kind of contributing to the factor that we're having here. I'm not going to talk too much about this one either, but this is just a 21-year history of those ups and downs. And if you look at it, you can certainly see the volatility, but the thing that really stands out is that we never once hit 6.8% on the nose, or even, it's rare we even get that close to it. So this is one of the challenges, trying to depend so heavily on investment returns to pay off our debt. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that because there's so many factors in UAL, and again, trying to tie it to an example of another debt instrument that may explain sort of the fact that every year the amount of principal that we owe increases, is that if you change one small dollar and you extrapolate it out over years, it can have a pretty significant impact. And this is that last sentence there, this little footnote is in the actuarial reports issued by CalPERS. Valuation results will vary from one year to the next and can diverge significantly from projections over a period of several years. And so I put this out there also so that when I come back to you next year or a couple years from now and I tell you that our debt has changed again and it's more, try to keep that in mind when we go through these tonight, that when I tell you we owe $32.8 million, it's an estimate today. It's our best guess, and it probably is not right, and it will probably change, and I hate to say it, but chances are it will go up. The city manager asked me to come up with a good analogy to put this in perspective, and I it took me a little while. I was thinking about mortgages, interest only, car loans, and what I really came up with is the idea that this is probably more like a payday loan than anything else. And that's not to say CalPERS is a predatory payday lender, but the fact that we get hit with increases to our base that we can't even pay off in a single year. And because of that, we end up paying interest on interest on interest. And so this is just sort of the challenge of this particular debt issue. To put this in perspective a little bit more about that, little bit of a change can have a big impact. If you change the assumption about the earnings from 6.8, which is our current base in the middle there, if you decrease it to 5.8% over a 20-year period, you actually will increase your debt by $13.9 million. That's 43%. Just 1% higher, and you decrease it by $11.4 million at the bottom there, and that's actually a 35% decrease. So little numbers, little changes in the numbers can have a big impact. You could even consider this sort of the chaos theory of relationships. Oops, excuse me. Sorry, my eyes. I know. Thank you. Let me make sure I'm. Thank you. So I know that there is a lot of numbers on this page, and I'm not expecting that anybody is going to want to go through this in detail, but it is a reminder to you that we actually have 6 separate plans, each with a different benefit package, different retirement ages, and different factors that contributed to it. But I'm going to push you over to the right-hand side and just kind of give you some totals here. The classic plans, which you have a miscellaneous classic at the top here, and about halfway down there in the light color, the safety classic, are your oldest plans. They're also provide the best benefits, the lowest retirement ages, and have the greatest capacity for earning. They're also 97% of your total $32.8 million UAL. So they're definitely the driving factor. They're also the one because they're the oldest, they have the most retirees and the least amount of active employees. Your safety plans, you have a safety classic, but you also have 3 other plans. The reason that I wanted to kind of highlight this is that it is 36% of the UAL, but to put that in perspective, they're only about 20%. Your sworn officers are only about 20% of your total staffing levels. That's because of just their makeup of their jobs. They have a tendency to retire earlier. Disability is usually more at issue, and they also typically are an average employee. They earn a little bit more, so they certainly are a little bit more expensive when it comes to pensions. And then the PEPR plan here down at the bottom, this really came from the Reform Act in 2013, and it's really the way that CalPERS is trying to cut the costs going forward. The challenge here is that it's going to take probably another 5 to 7 years before you really truly see the savings, and we actually start decreasing in our UAL and our annual payments. And it's about 2% of your total UAL, so a very small portion, and it certainly has the most active employees, and currently you only have 1 retiree from the city that's actually collecting benefits. This is another really busy chart, and I'm going to tell you, don't pay too much attention, but I wanted to talk about and kind of get you to understand that layering. So you can see on the top left-hand corner that we added 3 layers in 2013, and we continue to add layers as you go. Any of the positive numbers are sort of are bad. That means you're adding to your UAL. It means it's increasing. You'll notice that there are 20, if you counted them, there are 22 gray boxes where you're adding to your UAL, and there are only 9 that you're actually subtracting. So again, that kind of gives you the point that we're adding to it. And it also shows you that there's a number of items. So you'll have investment gains, you'll have non-investment gains and losses, which is going to be changes in your actuarials, your inflation factors, and experience. So those are your more demographic items. The other 2 over here that I've highlighted are more recent and have really big impacts on your ULA. You have your net investment gain in 2021. This is the year that we actually had the 21.3% interest earnings, which was great. made a big difference. Unfortunately, just a year later, you had a 6.1% loss, and when you add that to the 6.8% anticipated earnings, you actually ended up worse off at the end than you did at the beginning. So just to kind of, one of the other things I want to point out about talking a little bit about that sort of analogy to a payday loan and sort of interest on top of interest adding to your base. This is, and they're rounded just to make them a little bit easier. But on the left-hand side, when you look at you've got an investment gain and loss. So that was actually because we did not make the 6.8% interest earnings target. We were at 6.1% this particular year. And then you had some adjustments in your actuarials, that you had higher inflation than was anticipated, and you had growth in payroll that changed, that added an additional $1.5 million to your UAL. And that's that $2 million difference between 2022 and 2023. You will notice on the base that in this current fiscal year, you don't make there's no payment of that additional layer built in. The problem when you look at the ending balance for your UAL at 6/30/2024, you've actually added interest. So it's grown and you have not made a payment at all. So you've just kind of built in an additional layer. 2025, you don't make a payment. It doesn't get built into your payments until 2 years later. And so you now have $281,000 additional interest. That's over 12% that has just added to the $2 million initial debt. And again, that's one of the challenges in trying to keep up with these increasing costs. And then in 2026, when you finally make a payment, your investment gains and losses are what they call ramped up. And there's an explanation down here, ramped up. They're only done 20% for the first 4 years when you start making payments. So you're only making, that $11,500 represents 20% of a regular payment. The next year you'll pay 40%, 60, 80, and it takes you 5 years or 7 years later before you start paying the actual full amortization of that $500,000 loss. So again, for years on any layer that adds to your liability, you're accruing interest before you ever make a payment. And that's something I want you to keep in mind, because it may be one of the things that we talk about as far as going forward to try to manage this a little better. We try to make payments on those amortization schedules in that first year to take away the growing interest. This happens to be just the historic projected UAL minimum payments that are required. 2018, that number was $889,000. If you go to 2025, which is where we are currently at, it is up to $3 million. That is a 173% increase. It comes out to 22% a year. If you go to 2027, which is when we hit $3.4 million, it increases again. You've got 200, and actually I take that back. If you go to 2029, where it hits the highest at $3.4 million, it's 280% increase, and it's also a 23% annual or averaged increase in our costs. And so again, this is really driving city cost up, and it only gets worse as we go out. So last year during the fiscal budget for 2023-24, the council did make some pretty big investments in trying to cut these costs and to make some changes and to manage those interest charges that were being leveraged against us. So you scheduled, and we made a $5 million one-time payment, an ADP. We established a Section 115 trust, and we made an initial deposit of $2.5 million. You adopted a funding policy. And the two things I want to talk about tonight are whether or not we go with a fresh start, where we change our amortization from a 20-year to a 15-year on our UAL for the classic, which is about 63% of your total, or a 10-year virtual. And one of the things in your funding policy that I just want to check in with you is to evaluate your strategy annually. And we did commit to putting aside 25% of any surplus in the general fund towards it. Again, I'll remind you that we didn't have that policy in place for 2022-23, but excuse me. But you did have almost a $2 million surplus, and you could take about $480,000 of that and dedicate it, and we could bring that back as a budget adjustment for you, either earlier or by mid-year. The other thing I wanted to remind you is that we use general fund, water and wastewater funds, and when we look at the water and wastewater fund portions of that debt, you may want to consider paying those off early. And the reason for that is that will help you regulate and control your rates going forward. It would be one of the cost-cutting measures we could take. So this is that investment that you made in your UAL and in your CalPERS pension. And I'm just going to kind of walk through from the top down. Let me see if I can get. I did, because we have separate funds in place, and I wanted to make sure and make it very clear that we are segregating the water and the wastewater funds and applying those to the liability that was created by employees that work for those funds. But the top line there, if you follow it across, we've allocated it out. That's your $32.8 million UAL over on the right-hand side. So the total of you've got your general fund, your police, and that adds up to your total general fund. Other funds is everything else, and then your water and your wastewater funds. The ADP funding is the $5 million, and it follows the sources where it came from. The estimated UAL for 6/30/2024 takes into account two things, and this is an estimate that I calculated based on the information we got for 2023. Two things happen here. One, we're reducing it by the amount of the ADP funding applied to that fund. There's also a 5% decrease in the overall UAL, and that's an estimate of the impacts of the 9.3% preliminary interest earnings for 23-24. So there is some positive here, and it works to your benefit. So you can see that we're estimating that it would be about $26.5 million. So you do have, or 26.5 million would be your liability at the end of the current year. And then you made that $2.5 million investment into a Section 115 trust. And again, that money didn't go directly to CalPERS. We set it aside in a trust account. The nice thing about this is that it gives you a lot of flexibility because we can use it at any time, and we can use it for ULA payments, or we can use it for regular payments. And it can serve two purposes. You can use it in the future when you have some of those really big hits on your annual payments. You can use it when maybe we have a bad budget year and you just need a place to borrow it. It can serve as a reserve. Or the third item is that you could actually build it into planning on using it in the future just to offset payments. So it's really up to you. Right now, we're treating it basically just as a reserve. We put the money aside. It's there for the purpose of paying pensions, but we don't have an exact plan on how it will happen. So at the bottom, if you applied the 115 trust to each of the funds, again, we drop down to $23.67 million in liability. And I do want to point out that this is a really big deal. You went from 69% funding level to 76% by making that investment. We already have received a savings at $2.2 million in interest charges. You've reduced the liability just the $5 million by setting it aside, and then the $2.5 million. The other thing you'll notice on the Section 125, or excuse me, the Section 115 trust, is that you invested 2.5, and we expect it to be about $250,000 more by the end of the year. So it's also earning interest to offset some of those costs. So it is keeping up with it. I've also highlighted in red the two outstanding balances after all of those things are taken into place for water and wastewater funds. And you can see from the perspective of what we can do, they're fairly reasonable. And I would certainly suggest that we may want to pay those off. And again, that would really help us manage our rates, our water and wastewater rates going forward, and reduce the need for increases there. This just gives you a graphical review of the blue is if you had done nothing, if you had not made that $5 million ADP payment. and the orangish color is with the $5 million, and it shows you your savings. And what you really got here is that for the first 10 years, you cut an average of about $700,000 off your annual payment, and then they're equal for the last 10 years. Over the life, the 20-year life, it's about $375,000 savings on an average. So again, you can see the results of your investment already. So let's talk about the option to cut that 20-year amortization down to either 15 years or to 10 years. Sorry. So these numbers do include, again, the $2.2 million savings. The orange is just if you do nothing. That includes your $5 million commitment, but it's if you do nothing else, that's what you're going to pay. If you go with a 15 years, and that's the number in gray, you can see that you stick to about $1.5 million a year, which is really where you top out in 2030, 2031 on your miscellaneous payments, your miscellaneous classic UAL. And that would result in a $4.3 million savings. It does include the $2.2 million, so it's an additional $2.1 million savings in interest. And then if we were able to commit to a 10-year amortization, you would actually save $7.5 million. And again, the $2.2 million is built into that. So it's about a $5.3 million additional savings. There's two ways to do fresh starts, which is when you basically re-amortize your outstanding UAL for any one of the plans. A hard one is where we go to CalPERS and we say, we would like you to re-amortize our schedule for either 10 or 15 years. It is a non-revocable commitment, and we have to make those payments going forward. So it really commits you, and not only just this council, but it commits future councils to making those payments on time. A virtual fresh start is where we would make that decision internally, and instead of committing an irrevocable change to our amortization schedule, we'd take our current schedule, and on an annual basis, you would budget for an additional ADP to meet that same level. So you have the ability to have the flexibility if we have hard years of not meeting it, and you're also not tying your future councils to those payments. Again, it's a choice that you can make. So staff recommendations really quick. We would recommend that you set aside the $480,000, which is the surplus from 22-23, and either make a contribution to the 115 trust or make an ADP. We would recommend we commit to the hard 15-year fresh start with CalPERS, but try to make those additional payments by budgeting every mid-year for an additional ADP. We would also like us to target the public safety UAL. We targeted the miscellaneous one, which is about 62% of the total, and that public safety is the other 35% of that 97%. And then the final item is considering whether or not you would like to attempt to pay off the current UAL for water and wastewater, again, just to manage some of that interest cost for our utilities and manage the rates a little bit better. And I'm sorry, but if you have any questions.
So you lost me at the chaos theory. I did need some clarification. So if we do the 15, we can still opt to do the 10. And if we could do 5.2 million, and the least would be the 2.1 million if we could not do. Is that correct?
That is. So you've already saved 2.2 million. If you did the 15-year and nothing else, you would save an additional 2.1.
Okay.
And then if you did the full 10 years and you were able to stick to it for 10 years, or future councils were, you would have the 2.2 million plus the 5.3 million, doing math in my head.
And I apologize, I'm really having a hard time tracking. So how is that different than if we were to do the virtual fresh start?
So the hard fresh start is you commit through CalPERS, and it's irrevocable.
Right.
We don't get to go back. The virtual would be that you would make a choice every year, and you would budget that additional difference to pay it off early as an additional payment. So
Gotcha.
for example, if it's $1.5 million is your payment, your 15-year payment to CalPERS, you would say, okay, we're going to pay another, $300,000, $400,000 this year as an additional discretionary payment, and that will get us to what would be the equivalent of a 10-year payoff.
Thank
Does that
you.
make sense?
I hope so. I might have to sleep on
That's
it.
And you
Yeah,
can,
no, it does.
You can
It
follow
does.
up, and I'll,
Yeah.
and I'll post this, the presentation on the website, so if you want to go back and look at it, you're welcome to, and so anybody in the public can also. We've also got, just as an aside, and I can't imagine anybody's going to want to look at these, but we also have each of the actuarial reports for each of our plans there, so if you really want to dig in, you're welcome to it.
Ooh, some pleasure reading for tonight.
I'll send you a link.
Mine's related to that.
Go ahead then. I'll go.
Just really quick clarification. So, because it seems to me, so the tenure is more flexible because you can decide yearly, and it has a greater return, but it also will cost us more to invest in it up front.
So annually, it'll cost you more, and the difference isn't that so you could do a 10-year through CalPERS. We're just talking about a 10-year virtual to give you the flexibility so that you're not having to commit to that higher amount. And so that if something in the future, we had a bad year or we really needed to do something different, you would have that opportunity to opt out of it, or future councils would not have to make that because you didn't go through CalPERS and commit irrevocably to it. But yes, otherwise, the shorter the time period, the more you're going to save.
So I have two questions, and I mean, I assume based on past choices that we've made as a council, I'm pretty sure we'll probably all agree to the yes to the virtual 10 years because we are trying to be responsible and towards the future too. So I'm definitely on board for that. One of my questions is why the recommendation to any hard commitment in the first place? So that's one question. And then the second question is, if we're saying yes to whether it be the hard 15-year with a 10-year virtual attempt, can we afford those payments right now?
Yeah, and Tabitha, can you put the last slide up just so we can kind of.
So really the only reason to commit, and we'll kind of talk about this a little bit more philosophical, is once you make that commitment, you have to. So you'll do so the city will do what it takes to meet its debt. And that may mean that this council in the next year or two, or new councils 5 years from now, may have to make choices between paying the CalPERS liability and programs and other things that they may want to do. So you're committing a portion of funds that can't be used for anything else. So there is that idea that it does mean that you're not going to do something in the short term. In the next 10 years, you're going to commit costs that will limit the capacity of city councils to put other programs and stuff together. And so that's really the choice. At this point, I'm comfortable with a 15-year. The 10-year virtual gives us that flexibility. I do feel like we can do it, but I do want to say up front that if you spend an additional, $500,000 on ADP payments, whether you're committing or not, it is something that the city council, it is something we won't do somewhere else. It's a program or a capital project or something we won't do. However, it does buy us more spending power in the future. So, once we get over this hurdle and we pay it, the city will be in a much better shape because you will have saved millions of dollars that can be spent in future years. So it's one of those things that you have to, today we take the hard route of being austere and reducing, and again, not talking about Measure H's impact on this, but it does put us in a much better position financially in the future, and that's the reason that we would do it. And it's that even if we target lesser amounts, even if we say, okay, we're not quite ready to do a 15-year and we did a 17-year by doing ADPs, anything we can do, anything we can pay today will save us quite a bit of money in the future. And I throw that out. And to put it in perspective, 6.8%, and then of course anything that we're not earning is far more than we're earning on our interest investments currently. We're at about 4.5, which is much more than the city has made for years. There was a point not too many years ago where, I think the city was lucky if they broke 1% a year in interest, and you were still paying CalPERS 6.8%. So it's a good use of your money, but it does limit what city councils and the city can do going forward, especially in the short term.
And the short term is like the next
10 years.
10 years, right?
Yeah.
So y'all just got reelected, you're gonna have to buckle down.
So this is, there's no speculation here. This is just the way it is. What happens if things change along the way and we don't even know what they are?
Well, and the UIL, the liability will change because, as we talked about, everything is based on assumptions and estimates, and so nothing is going to come in exactly where they want it. And I wouldn't count on it, but there's a chance it could be better. There's a chance it could be worse, but it will not be what we predicted. That $32.8 million will change next year. It'll change the year after that. So while we're talking about what we think is a firm number, it's not. And so that's the one thing I kind of caution you. But we do know that this is the city's largest liability. We're paying a higher interest rate on it than we are on anything else, and it's far above what we're earning. So anything we can do to pay it down makes sense. But the cost is potentially not being able to do all of the services, programs, and projects that we would all like to do.
But you said that does not take into account Measure H.
It does
right?
not.
So there's our saving grace.
To a point, yeah.
Yeah.
It helps. I didn't, and quite honestly, because of course this was the day after the election, I didn't know or even anticipate that we would have kind of the clear line that we have there. We're making assumptions about Measure H. And so I didn't want us to build that into our base. It's also why I asked for direction tonight and didn't want you to make decisions, because I wasn't sure that we would have all the financial information to really put that together.
So it's the interest rates that are hurting it, because these numbers are so big that it doesn't even seem real. So the numbers can just keep growing and growing. We'll never be able to pay it off. It'll just keep growing, right? So do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Are you saying, the way I'm feeling is the game keeps being changed on us all the time, so we're trying to be responsible, and we're putting all the extra money we have on it. Is this doing any good?
That's pretty much what I mean.
It's doing a lot of good. I really want to say that every dollar you invest today saves us interest. It saves us spending the money else later. And I do, as the city manager just reminded me, we do, when we talk about the fact that most of the people, you have a very small number of active employees on the classic plans, which is 97% of this cost. And most of them are retired, and I'm just going to say something horrible and blunt, which is they will pass away and those costs will stop. And your PEPRA group, which is the Reform Act from 2013, those costs are never going to be like this. There's caps in place. They get less benefits. They increase the retirement ages. So there will be some end to all of this, and we really will start to see, assuming that we don't have crazy adjustments that happen over the next 7 years, we'll see adjustments about 5 to 7 years out. You'll start seeing savings that you'll look at, and you won't be paying that same amount out, and we won't have the same impacts.
Yeah, I guess what causes these fluctuations? Who says that this year it's going to go up this much?
So the interest earnings are pretty straightforward. If you don't hit that 6.8%, earnings target, anything below that is calculated at a cost, and it's basically just interest on what you owe. So again, if we can reduce what we owe, we're not going to have to pay as much interest on the difference between what we're trying to earn and what we didn't earn. And when we have greater earnings, it'll help us, it'll offset, it'll reduce it. The other thing is they are always updating. Again, it's the fact that everything is an assumption. So we say everybody's going to live till, 80 years old, and I can tell you it's 30 pages of crazy numbers that calculate, your mortality rates. But they update those. People are living longer, and suddenly they calculate that that's going to add an additional $2 million to it, and they add it to the base that year. They changed that target rate from 6 point, when it was 7% and dropped it to 6.8, that cost us money and increased the amount. So it is just everything you can think of. Inflation, we add to our payroll.
So are we making this decision tonight, or is it something that we do at mid-year budget review?
So what I'm suggesting is that you think about it. If you have direction for me tonight to bring something back, I'm happy to, or something that you'd like to see built into the mid-year budget. The other thing you can do is if there's more information or you want to revisit it, I'm happy to go through that. Or if there's anything that I can do to try to make it easier to understand, I'm more than willing to kind of walk through it in a little bit more detail.
Tabitha, the one thing you do is always make things, I think, the easiest to understand. I mean, honestly.
It's not easy.
I think I'm going to take it out to, let's take it out to public comment, and then we can come back and see how we're doing. So this is public comment on unfunded pension liability. So if you'd like to make a comment on that and that only, please come up.
Yeah, hi, Bob Rottenberg. Thank you for this. 2 elephant in the room questions. Is there any pressure or direction or assistance expected from the state on this? This is ours to deal with. Okay, then the other elephant in the room, I'm assuming that you're not talking about reducing any of the benefit package that the retirees have.
You can't ask, you can talk to us, and then if we want to clarify
Okay.
it, we can ask her. Thank you.
So that was just want to make
Sorry.
sure that people who retire with a benefit package are assured that they're going to keep getting that package.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Tabitha, would you answer that? That's an interesting question.
So because it's a legal contract, whatever benefit package, and we had those 6 plans, whatever benefit package the employee has sort of qualified for and signed up for, that has actually been litigated, and they have the right to those benefits, and you can't go back and retroactively change those. Anybody new signs up, of course, for the reformed Petra, and so the benefits are reduced, but that's the agreement they have when they become. So that's how that works. And the state has, because they have more liability than we do, I don't see any relief coming from them. They have their own issues.
Thank you. Is there any more questions on this from anybody in person? All right, let's take it to Zoom. These are comments on this agenda item.
We have Ellen P. with her hand up. I think she had a general comment, but we will see. Ellen, did you want to comment on the pension update?
Yeah, I've never looked at Arcata's financials before, so this was super interesting and informative. One of the things I noticed was that really, really big, almost unreal number under the police department. And I was wondering how much Arcata City Council and the city of Arcata could save if we defunded and abolished the Arcata police, who are harassing, terrorizing, beating up, and unwarrantedly arresting our community members. And I will have more comments on that later. I also was wondering about CalPERS. I heard that was mentioned several times, and I'm wondering if that has investments in Israeli-based companies or weapons manufacturers, because this state of Israel has been found guilty of apartheid and plausibly guilty of genocide, and the entire international community has a duty to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel as a result of this. And so if Arcata has funds invested in Israel, that is a big problem. And I think that we need to look into that very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else have on Zoom?
No.
Yes, let's take it back to the council.
Yeah, just a follow-up question on the last caller, because I think that we have been asked this before. When it comes to our CalPERS, do we have any, like, if even and I'm not suggesting anything, I'm asking the question kind of on behalf of what the caller brought up. Would we be able to say we don't want to do business with you anymore because of what you're invested in? I don't think we have that choice or power, but I'd like you to answer that.
So there have been movements for divesting from certain investments, and an example, and it was they did divest from tobacco products many years ago, but it did come from citizens and employees and cities asking CalPERS, and they took it under advisement and did go through the process of divesting. But those challenges but we do not, we can ask for it, we can suggest it, and as anybody in the state can, but we do not have control, and we don't have the choice to invest or not invest. We have signed up for the CalPERS systems for employees. It's a contract. We owe it. One of the interesting things is that it has been litigated that you can't, even if we declared bankruptcy, we do not get out of these liabilities. And so how they invest their money, while we can try to encourage them, we can't force the issue, and we're not at all making any of those decisions. And like I said, I don't believe that CalPERS is invested in those, but I have not gone through recently and looked at every one of their investments, so I can't say either way.
Right, but what I'm hearing is, we, and I know that we do make requests. We have done that, not us per se as a council, but councils have made requests regarding investments, and that if the general public, has concerns or is unhappy with any of what CalPERS is investing in, that they should absolutely put the pressure on CalPERS, because you can pressure us, but we don't have the power to change this.
Yeah, certainly. And again, a good example is, there's been a lot of talk about fossil fuels, divesting of fossil fuels, and CalPERS has not made that decision to do that, but they have certainly tried to pressure those organizations that they're invested in to change their policies too.
Mary, you looked like you wanted to say something.
No, just thinking about direction and where the council should go. I mean, really, it's a trade-off about how much discretionary spending do we want to be able to do in any year? How much money do we have to spend on projects, positions, salary increases, all those things that the council normally sees as an expense in a given year? How much do we want to commit to paying down this debt and reduce our interest payments? And it's kind of hard when you look at the numbers that Tabitha presented. Of course, you want to save all those interest payments, and I could understand the council having a little bit of a tough decision making that when you don't know what our spending outlook looks like. And so I think, just to get a general sense of where the council wants to go, and then as we go into mid-year, thinking about, okay, how much budget do we want to preserve for those discretionary type projects that we'll have coming up, or other contributions to infrastructure projects, not water and wastewater, not utilities, but that's really what we're trying to balance, is paying down that debt, reducing the interest payments that we'd have to pay, and then but keeping enough money that we think we will need to be able to do those other types of programs and positions and extra hiring and whatever the case may be that comes up. And so making this decision now would really kind of making one of these decisions now, a more conservative one would put the city in a position to have to pay more now, but in the future be in a much better place to be able to do more. So
yeah, and I know that we usually are pretty conservative about paying things down. I'm wondering what bringing it back at mid-year with maybe like Measure H kind of added in to the budget would look like, and also that's kind of at the time where we reevaluate some programs that we want to invest in. So, I mean, when is mid-year? Is it March? It's not that much. February? March?
So in an ideal world, it's late January. It's probably February.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, that's only a couple months away.
So is there a way that, well, I have no idea, financially where we're going to be in anything. And so that's why I said it's all projection. Or we can make a mistake and say we want to do such and such, and that we're not at, it's going to cost us a lot to do that. If we're going to say the 10-year, we want to go on the 10-year. There's so much speculation.
So I'd be more comfortable doing the 15-year.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Stacy. I would be more comfortable doing the 15 with the idea that if things looked great, we could, do the 10, make those extra payments. But just to make sure that we're not overcommitting. And so we still have a little bit of latitude if we do find, a project that we really want to fund and Measure H is not going to be enough. And I do like the idea of sacking away the 480,000 to offset. Is that the right nomenclature?
Yes, that works perfectly.
Okay.
We would put it in the Section 115
And
trust that would basically allow us that flexibility to use. And again, it creates a reserve in the sense that we could, if next year you wanted to do something came up and you said, gosh, we really have, we'd really like to do this. Let's go ahead and use the, by then, let's say it's $3 million in our Section 115 trust. We're going to pay our annual cost that year. It buys us some time and it allows us to do that project that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And so it does create, it's set aside for pension cost, but you can use it at any time at the council discretion, and it can be used for your regular annual payment. So it also can give you a holiday in a year if you need it, if things change. That is the one thing I like about it, is that it doesn't reduce your cost directly, but it allows you the flexibility to use it when you need to. And it can be a budget savings in the sense of that year that you have a project that you really want or need to do, or you have a shortfall in revenue or something that comes up that's an emergency. It gives you a place to go for funding.
And I know we're not making a decision tonight, but I'll just share what my leanings and my thoughts are for going forward. So I am hesitant to commit future councils to this decision, just because we don't know what they will be facing. But I'm wondering if we could talk about committing to the virtual, trying the 10-year, before we commit to anything hard. Why don't we spend a couple of years trying the virtual, and we set that goal of 10 or 15, and we just see, can we accomplish that? And what does that look like, so that gives us a little more information before we make that decision for the hard one? Because if we're doing well, we're still saving the money because we're making the payments. If we see this is too big of an ask and we're struggling, then we're not legally bound and we can adjust. So I would kind of like to go for the most conservative approach, but without being bound to it, just to see if we are able to make that happen as a council.
At the same time, I think that I would still like to set aside that $480,000 too. I think so. I'm inclined to agree with Stacy. Sarah?
Just to clarify, I was meaning that it would be virtual, I guess. I didn't make that, I assumed that's, because I'm always wanting to play it safe and not make decisions for future council.
Just to agree, because we're all, thrown in right now, but I think the flexibility of looking at that virtual is really what's going to, make doing this possible and make it, work out for future councils as well. I also, and maybe this is something that comes back at mid-year, but I do think it's important to look at that item 5 too, about how we can pay off towards our water and wastewater funds, because just there's going to be, we want to not have to raise rates. And I think looking just on the outlook of the future with, where our wastewater treatment plant is and updating, city infrastructure and everything like that, we need to be mindful and of our ratepayers, while also, knowing that there will be costs in the future. And I think that would be a smart move right now as well, if we're able to swing that and get that going.
Well, so I feel like we should be conservative, and if we have the extra money, then we pay it off. I guess that's sort of how I work anyway. And so then that would be the virtual, I guess, whatever it would be. And then if all of a sudden we see we have extra money over here, then we would take that and apply it. Can we do that?
Absolutely. I mean, it would be, what you're basically talking about is that we'll talk about this again at mid-year, and we'll build it into the budget projections. And that does mean, you may have to make choices about yes, we're going to do this, we're not going to do this, we're going to pay that. But that would be essentially an annual choice. And there's, again, the $7.5 million is a huge investment and made a big change in where we're at currently. And so anything we can do going forward, and we can certainly, the whole purpose of the pension funding policy was to make us look at this every year and to try to address whatever we could do.
And we have you to thank you for that, so. it's you, yeah.
I think that we're all pretty much on the same page. You have the direction you need. You don't need a motion or anything. Stacy, did you have anything last?
I just want to ask one other question. So we only can address this once a year. So if we see we're doing really well and we say, oh, I'm just going to use an example, we can we can pay down we have $100,000 extra or $1,000 and we can apply it. We can do that?
You can do it any time. You can do this any time of the year. And based on our policy, which is not law, we are supposed to check in every year and talk about it. So we at least do it once a year and we address it. But we could talk about it as much as you want.
Well, I feel more comfortable with that we could apply it as things go along and we say, oh, then we can make this payment now because instead of being bound that we always are stuck at a certain thing.
Well, and I think I like where we're headed as far as being responsible, but we also have to keep in mind that we are balancing the needs of a community, and sometimes there are very immediate and important needs, and so I just think we have to be mindful. We did we did make a very big payment to this, and that's great, and I think that we should when we can. I think we're all kind of on that page, but just want to bring it back, and you've mentioned it too, but we do have a responsibility to the immediate folks in our community too, and so we need to balance that out.
Okay, do you have the direction you need? Thank you again so much for your presentations, taking something that's so complicated and making it almost understandable. So we really appreciate you, Tabitha. Thank you. All right, are we doing all right? Yeah. The City Council values your comments. The public comment period allows for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Please know that pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take actions on item not listed on the agenda. The council may respond to statements. If you are in person and wanting to give public comment, please line up at the podium. Please raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or press star 9 now if you're on the phone line and you'd like to make public comment. All right, let's go.
Okay. Hello. My name is Gary Bloomfield. I've been an Arcata resident for over 40 years. And I would like to comment about the proposal for trying to do a sister city in Gaza. I think the proposal of establishing a sister city relationship with the city in Gaza is not only a contentious and inflammatory idea, but it's also an extremely misguided and dangerous one for several reasons. First, the only official government in Gaza is Hamas, an internationally recognized terror organization that even now still holds hostages from Israel and other countries. To establish a relationship of this sort would violate both national and international laws. Second, sister city programs are based on the mutual exchange and celebration of cultures. The ruling body of Gaza, Hamas, is committed to the total annihilation of the sovereign nation of Israel, as well as Jews throughout the world, as evidenced by both their official charter and calls for, to globalize the Intifada. This stands in clear opposition to Arcata's history of promoting peace and coexistence. Thirdly, this, I have to say, stunt is clearly part of a larger pattern of attempts to completely delegitimize the state of Israel. This only serves to strengthen both Hamas and its destructive and clearly genocidal goals, which at the same time weaken the efforts of the centrist and progressive movements in Israel to force the right-wing government of Netanyahu to make hard compromises to negotiate a deal for release of hostages and coming up with a mutual and effective ceasefire, if not an end to all hostilities, and the chance for coexistence and a lasting peace. And finally, Arcata already has a sister city, Camoapa, Nicaragua, and has had numerous mutually beneficial exchanges of cultural and mutual visits. And notably, that relationship has no overtones of hatred and warmongering. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, thank you. I'm a student at CS at Cal Poly Humboldt, and seeing what happened to one of my classmates, it's appalling. This kind of escalation for relatively small offences is what example are we showing, kind of thing. And there is an element that, like, you, as representatives, you are responsible for these things, and I just wanted to point out the intersection between racism and sexism, where, like, letting these men get away with doing these things also could expand past that to just the people you're working, like, to people, it could get further than where it is, kind of thing. And I don't know, and just from a personal experience, I don't know how many of you guys have been arrested, but watching that video is very hard because you have them clearly, like, putting their elbows on him and in him whilst telling him to stop resisting. I don't know if you had somebody jab their elbow into you. It's very hard not to respond when somebody is jabbing their elbow inside of you. And just the maliciousness whilst they were doing it it's atrocious. And if you guys stand by and co-sign that, it will look very badly upon you guys as well. It's not an okay thing. Also, there's a lot of comments about this Gaza City thing. I'm not too much aware of it, but as far as I'm aware, Benjamin Netanyahu has been called upon by the UN for also potentially committing acts of genocide. Israel for a long time has been accused of committing war crimes through the UN and official bodies. A lot of the Gazans are children, so the idea that, like, there's some sort of militant force that's going to cause some global issue is not, it's an unrealistic analysis of the situation as far as I'm aware. And it kind of ties in, you know, kind of this justification for safety where the amount of violence that somebody's allowed to do to justify their own mental safety whilst they're doing such unsafe things to other people is kind of, it all ties in. So people saying this has nothing to do, making Gaza a sister city with Arcata, I would ask you to question yourself and ask yourself if this really does have nothing to do with this area, or if there's actually quite a lot of connections between these things, and if you'd want to make a stand against that whilst it's all happening right here and right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment.
When they proposed that Arcata and Gaza become sister cities, they demonstrated the 3 Ds of anti-Semitism and institutionalized bias: double standards, delegitimization, and demonization of Jews. Through this process, you manufacture consent for the genocide of Jews, both in Israel and globally, an explicitly expressed goal of Gaza's democratically elected government. The explicitly expressed goal of Gaza's educational institutions, and the acted upon goal of not only Hamas and the other 5 militant wings of Gaza's government, but also of the ordinary Gazan civilians who took part in the mass rape, mutilation, and murder of innocent Jewish women, children, and babies on October 7th, 2023, and the kidnapping and continued torture and starvation of innocent hostages ever since. In the 365 days between October 7th, 2023 and October 7th, 2024, Gazans launched over 13,200 Irani-supplied missiles at Jewish civilian targets including hospitals and schools, even though Jewish schools and hospitals were not used as missile launch pads and command centers as Gazan schools and hospitals are. You have a double standard about their explicitly stated and demonstrated goal of genocide, and you have delegitimized the proven reports of mass rape and mutilation and the torture and murder of infants, even when Gazan sadists videotaped it themselves and celebrated it gleefully in the streets of Gaza. And when the idolized sadists of Gazan's rape culture are teenagers, trained and armed with machine guns and grenades and knives, you call killing them an act of genocide, counting those torturers and murderers as children if they are younger than 20 years old, and calling Jewish teenage soldiers committers of genocide when they kill rapists who explicitly declared that they set out to commit genocide. This is a double standard, delegitimization and demonization. So-called progressives pretend to care about indigenous peoples' rights unless the indigenous peoples are Jews who have been in that land for 3,300 years continuously, more than twice as long as the longest Arab has. And it hasn't bothered you that the Arabs invaded, conquered, colonized, and oppressed the indigenous Jews there, even conspiring with Hitler himself to genocide, then in 1941. If you were not guilty of the double standards, delegitimization and demonization of Jews, you would have picked Sderot.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name is Tamar, and I'm Israeli American citizen, and I'm speaking to you today. I strongly oppose the recent request for the city of Arcata to establish sister city relationship with Gaza City. I think that it will deepen the already alarming levels of hostility and division that the community already increasing. Anti-Semitism that I experience myself and my family almost on a daily basis when I'm leaving my house. To establish sister cities relationship, Arcata official will have to sign an agreement with the highest elected appointed official from Gaza, which we all know that it's since Hamas has been ruling Gaza since election of 2006. The official definition, it's Gaza, it's Hamas, and United States and many other countries have designated Hamas as a terrorist organization. But such an agreement and relationship not only pose legal question, worse, will be morally question that concerning me. Hamas is a jihadist organization whose founding charter provide for the genocide of Jews. It cites particular violence to prove Muslim needs to fight and kill Jews. And in a letter that I provide everybody, I got the charter. It's not only about against the people in the state of Israel, it's also to people here, to Jewish people here. As October 7th has painfully proved, these are not just a statement to be brushed aside, but operational direction. It will morally reprehensible for Arcata to enter into any type of relationship with such an organization. Because of time, I'm going to talk that when the people, those people that request it, it's the same people that in every place, like yesterday we just saw about like how they violate the democratic process that we have in this country. And I wanted to emphasize that the request of to compare it to Boulder, Colorado. Boulder, Colorado make a sister city with a Palestinian Authority that doesn't have the same motivation that Hamas has, and Boulder, Colorado has also relationship, sister city with Israeli city. So such a comparison.
Thank you for your comment.
Hello, my name's Joanne McGarry, and I've been watching videos of the various city council meetings over the last year, and I think it's really very interesting, the evolution of the discussion and sometimes the de-evolution back. But one of the things that happened in one of the meetings, and I would really like to request, and I think it's sort of an equity issue, and it's been brought up in the past. So when I'm speaking to you and you want me to speak to you, but people watching can't see you in response to what the person at the podium is saying. So we're able to split the screen and just have the speaker in one section and you in the other. And that, I think, is a fuller picture of the dialogue or the conversation or the information that is being shared tonight. So I would like to suggest that we maybe try that again to do. And so I come here all the time. In the last few meetings I've come and I've sent you emails about my hope for 2025 is that Arcata puts itself on the map by joining International Cities of Peace organization out of Dayton, Ohio, by signing on to the Nonviolent City Project out of Pache Ibene, and finally signing the Charter of Compassion that is a beautiful, beautiful document. And this is a sensation of sharing that the city of Arcata wants to be a peaceful, nonviolent, compassionate place, whether it's for somebody barbecuing on the plaza or for people suffering in a land far away. I think we need to decide who we are. And those organizations are really helpful, I think, and many, many, many municipalities and cities join them. I was told I needed to find champions for these ideas, so I'm putting it out there to you. Any of you can choose any one of those things, the nonviolent, peace, or compassionate organizations. And I think it would be wonderful for Arcata to join those and be part of that. I do want to say that I'm all in favor of sister cities, and there's an International Sister Cities organization. Lots of people have more than one sister city. I personally was not invited by the group that has been discussing the sister city in Gaza. I'm not a part of that. I just want to make that clear. I do have the Peace and Justice Center sign. I would love for Equity Arcata to consider hanging that sign somewhere so we can all come and gather at places other than this to talk about things.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else have an in-person comment? All right, let's go to Zoom.
Okay. First, we have Alice Shaw.
Thank you so much. I am here tonight because I wanted to talk about what you all are doing to protect Black and brown bodies today. Last meeting, we spoke about Mike witnessing the police brutality against him. And last weekend, I personally witnessed Eamon Armstrong and Tamar's daughter, Daria, harass and encourage racism against a Palestinian child because they were wearing a keffiyeh. They singled her out. They singled out other children that were wearing keffiyehs. They yelled obscenities at them. They flipped them off where we were all trying to honor martyred children. So this is what's happening to Black and brown bodies right now. And what we need to do is we need to know that the only thing that will deepen the hostility that is happening right now is if you allow this racism and the lies spewed out of these Zionist mouths towards Palestinians who are here locally trying to live, trying to practice their culture, trying to just walk on the street, and also Palestinians globally. I don't know if you know this, but 1 out of 3 refugees in the world is Palestinian. I want you all to think about that. Let that really sink in. 1 out of 3. Why is that? Why have so many Palestinians had to leave their home that they did not want to leave? It's because of the Zionist regime. Hamas started social programs for Palestinians because of the suffering, the oppression, the apartheid, and the murderous Zionist regime. That's why Hamas started. And I think it's incredibly unbelievable that these people are asking Palestinians to have a government that can come and talk to other governments while they're being bombed by our American weapons. We need the sister city so that we can send aid to Gaza. We need the sister city so that this progressive town that Arcata says it is actually doing something, actually taking action, instead of just using words, instead of just saying that they love Black and brown bodies, instead of saying the land acknowledgement. They need to, you all need to take action. What is your land acknowledgement compelling you to do? What is your love for Black and brown bodies compelling you to do? How are you protecting our Black and brown bodies?
Thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Next, we have Ellen P. Ellen, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I attended this meeting to talk about Mike and the APD, but first I need to address the disgusting Zionist propaganda that is being spewed in the chamber right now. These people are racist. They're regurgitating lies and propaganda. Look up hasbaratracker.com. You will see every single lie that they just spewed debunked with facts, with sources. They are centering a non-existent supposed future possible genocide of Israelis while there is a current genocide of Palestinians going on perpetrated by the state of Israel. Disgusting. They are contributing to the dehumanization of Palestinians who live in this community, who they go out of their way to stalk and harass in public. I witnessed the event that Gigi and Alice described. It happened exactly as they described at a place that was supposed to be a cultural event to honor the dead. Disgusting. They are also insistent on conflating Judaism with Zionism, which erases the existence of my friends, anti-Zionist Jews, which I would argue is a little anti-Semitic, but I digress. I am asking you, the reason I called in today is for an update from the council members who promised to help get Mike's charges dropped. I would like you to tell us how that has gone. I would also like to hear about what the council is doing to hold the Arcata Police Department and its racist, violent officers accountable. And you know, that like homelessness and hunger proclamation you made earlier was real nice, I guess, in educating the public about why this exists. But are you also somehow ensuring that the APD is going to stop harassing unhoused people? I heard many people speak about this at the last meeting when we were speaking about what happened to Mike. The APD should be abolished. What are you going to do about it? This is your job. How many millions of dollars are we giving the Arcata Police Department to beat up community members, to give them possible concussions, to give them trauma, to unlawfully arrest them for no reason? And you have an equity Arcata? What is that? When your business owners on the plaza call the police on a peaceful Black person existing in public. Y'all need to do better.
Thank you for your comment.
And now we have Jamila. Go ahead, Jamila.
Hi. Yeah. So I am a 15-year resident of Humboldt County. I'm a graduate student at Cal Poly Humboldt, pursuing my master's in social work. I like to place myself with that because otherwise people don't listen to me when I say that I'm also happen to be Palestinian. And I actually also came here to voice my support in for Mike, and asking and demanding accountability for what is being done. We heard a lot of lip service, just as we've been hearing from all of y'all about anything that's social justice related. So what's going on with that? Like, what are those updates? Because I'd like you all to know that what we're doing is, we are taking care of our community. Our people need food, we're giving them food. Our people need protection, we're giving them protection. Our people need being just to be checked in on. That's what we're doing. What are you actually doing? What are you doing in these positions of false power that you hold? And I just also want to say, I am a person that was being stalked by this Zionist, this Tamar and her child, while I'm trying to actually mourn the literal family members that have been massacred by anybody, like, that's just by Zionists, like, and anybody that's supporting Zionism. You are complicit in the murder of my family. So I don't even get to mourn my family because I'm getting stalked by Zionists, actual local Zionists in our community. Insane. So just like want to emphasize what people have been saying. The Zionist propaganda, y'all, like, the facts are there. The facts are there. The fact that you continue to be so numb to this genocide is insane. And you will regret this someday. So I really encourage you to actually watch what we're watching. Go on Instagram and you will see the genocide. You will see these massacres. You will see these murders. You will see them. They're there for you. There's no reason that you cannot see what we're seeing. So that's on you. You have a lot of fucking work to do, especially like how fucking bold you think you are to be in a position of power. You don't deserve this. Hell fucking no, you don't deserve this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comment.
We have no other speakers.
All right. Oh, we don't have dates of future meetings. We already had that study session. I guess that's it. All right. Thank you.